Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Monster Families. Today we're going to be taking a look at the other version of the Corrupt Rogues. We've already taken a look at the Corrupt Rogue, which was the basic Corrupt Rogue with the sword and shield, which doesn't really have much going on. Then there's the Corrupt Spearwoman, or Corrupt Lancer, which actually does have some interesting features. The third type of variety of Corrupt Rogues is the Corrupt Archers. The Corrupt Archers are actually really easy to find because there's a famous one that is actually the best possible chance for you to get yourself a Gull Dagger, and she resides in the cave in Cold Plains. So if you make your way over to the cave in Cold Plains, which is called the Cave, you might have thought that I was just avoiding saying the name. No, it's literally called the Cave. If you go into the cave, you'll find the Dark Rangers. The Dark Rangers are one of the forms of Corrupt Rogues. And I've always kind of thought they were like demons or something. That's what I always thought. I mean, and they are classified as demons according to the game. I mean, if you look at their toes, they're all like ridiculous. And I don't know if that's actually their faces or like... Or what's going on with that? Like, is that just a helmet? It kind of looks like a helmet in the old graphics, but in the new graphics, it kind of looks like their head. I'm really not sure. If we go to the lore on the Ariat Summit page, the Ariat Summit page says, the foundations of the Sisters of the Sightless Eye were rocked when their own became tainted and began to take up arms against their surviving rogues. The least corrupted of these now evil sisters maintain enough of their wits to use their years of training with the bow to ill effect against any who oppose their will to their new master. Being caught in a firefight between a band of rogues who come across the coven of these dark archers is a dangerous situation indeed. So it's basically saying that these are the least corrupted of the rogues that actually manage to maintain some of their minds. And the interesting thing is they're all classified as demons, despite the fact that they are, of course, humans that are corrupted. So I'm not exactly sure how that works. I guess humans can be turned into demons. Rogues are obviously well notorious for their ability to shoot their bow. But more so than that is, if you look, each one of the archers kind of has its own flair. The Vile Archers have a chance to poison. The Dark Archers have a chance to deal cold damage. The Nightmare, only a Nightmare in Hell, by the way. The Black Archers have a chance to deal lightning damage. The Flesh Archers have a chance to deal fire. And even further than that, if you take a look at the guest monster list for Act 5, they have the Vile Archers casting fire arrows. And then the Dark Archers cast cold arrows. And they also have the ability to cast exploding and freezing arrow. So basically, they are kind of like little mini versions of the Act 1 Rogue once you get to Hell difficulty, or Nightmare and Hell difficulty. And once you get into the later acts, like Act 5, this is where they actually get access to fire arrow, exploding arrow, cold arrow, and freezing arrow. A little nasty. I mean, we can't be frozen. But still, the chill length duration on Cold Arrow is actually kind of insane. I actually had kind of like a whole build that I was thinking about with Cold Arrow, but it just worked better with Magic Arrow. So when you fought these before, you may have noticed that like the Dark Archers will chill you like almost every single time. The Black Archers will hit you with lightning damage and fire damage, and so it's never really just physical damage that you're dealing with, which is also one of the reasons why these are so nasty. If you take a look at their HP, they have pretty basic HP, not really too high and not really too low. It's just like dead center in the middle. Their resistances, they have rather low physical mitigation in Hell difficulty, even less physical mitigation in Hell than they have in Nightmare for some reason. I don't know why. And they basically have no physical mitigation in Normal and Nightmare except the Flesh Archers. I've noticed this across the board when it comes to a lot of these monster types, is that they tend to have like a very weak version, and then it scales up slowly until eventually you find like the top dog, like the big version. And the Flesh Archer is basically the big version of these. It seems to be the strongest one on the list in terms of like block chance. You see 45% block chance. I don't know how archers can block when they're using a bow. I wish my Amazon could learn that trick. She knows the dodge, avoid, and evade trick, but she doesn't know the blocking trick. And 45% is very high, especially when you consider that, like, the character that actually has the shield, so the corrupt rogue that actually has a shield only has a block chance of 40, but for some reason the flesh archer has a block chance of 45%, which, like, makes no sense. Their resistances, though, like, no magic resistance whatsoever in any difficulty. Their fire resistance is very low, except for the Vile Archer, which is fire aligned, so fire immune. The Flesh Archer is cold aligned and cold immune, but for the most part, not really a lot of cold resistance. The majority of them actually end up being lightning resistant, which is kind of the same across the board for a lot of the corrupt rogue types. The shield type, the lancer type, and the arrow bow type. The Dark Ranger, the Dark Archer, and the Black Archer are all immune to lightning in general. Even in the guest monster list, let's see here. Fire immune and... Is that it? Just fire immune? So one of them... Oh, fire immune and cold immune. Okay. And then for poison, they're all about the same. Pretty low. Not really much to talk about there. As you can see, immunities, lightning, fire, lightning, lightning, cold. So mainly lightning immunity. And then the ones in Act 5 are actually fire and cold. Now, these do actually make really good revives, my personal opinion. Like, I like using them as revives. And the reason why is because they are, well, they're ranged. So it doesn't really matter how many of them you have. They can essentially, very similar to the Lancer that I talked about in a previous video, is that, well, they don't really care about, like, distance to the monster, right? So you can have 10, 20, 30... 40, 50, 60 of them, however many like levels of revive you have, and they're all going to be hitting the target at the same time because, well, they're ranged monsters. Their projectiles do seem to be a little slow, though. Like, I don't know if you can see exactly what I'm talking about, but like when they're shooting their arrows, I've never seen arrows fly that slowly before. Like, I can literally follow them with the mouse. I mean, it kind of seems like they're under the effect of slow missiles. Maybe it's something just to make them a little bit less dangerous for players so that you have an easier time, like, dodging the effect, but it definitely does seem like they are very slow in terms of, like, their projectile speed. I think that's pretty much it for these guys. They are not necessarily the strongest monsters, but they can be definitely very tough. Especially in early difficulties, because the Dark Archers have the ability to chill you early on when you have no basically cold immunity. In Cave Level 1, there is a special super unique that has one of the highest chances to drop a gold dagger, and she is particularly nasty, honestly. Her name is Cold Crow, and she is one of the varieties of monsters we're talking about. I can never seem to find her quickly whenever I come down here. Like, she's always hiding in, like, some corner or something, and, like, by the time I end up finding her, like, I don't know. That's Steel Jade the Jagged. That's not it. There tends to be a lot of archers down here, by the way. Like, it's usually not just Cold Crow, so you'll find her eventually as you run around. She's not on level 2. And we're going to find her before we end this video, that's for sure. I often thought, like, to myself, and this is something that kind of, like, needs to be talked about, because, like, when you're in hell difficulty and you don't have Cannot Be Frozen, you often think to yourself, like, why am I always getting chilled? Like, that wasn't even a cold attack. Like, that monster doesn't even do cold damage. Like, how is this happening to me? Well, it turns out a lot of monsters actually do have, like, a special chance to dish out cold damage that you don't really realize, and they're all over the place. Cold Crow, however, is always cold enchanted as well. In this particular variant, she's also Spectral Hit, which is also just doubly nasty, which means that if I didn't have Cannot Be Frozen on, she would freeze me every single time. And this is one of the nasty things about Cold Crow, especially early on, like in, like, baby levels, is that when you go to fight her, she will chill you as a melee character, and it's very difficult to even get within range of her because you'll be chilled like permanently the entire time you're trying to fight her. It wouldn't hurt necessarily to bring along some thawing potions, but since thawing potions don't prevent you from being chilled, it is not really going to help you all that much. Like, it'd give you some resistance and help prevent some of the cold damage from reaching you, but it's not going to keep you from being chilled because she's just going to keep re-chilling you over and over and over again. Cold Crow is one of the special super unique monsters, and she falls into this category, so I figured it was good to at least point her out. You know, it kind of looks like that's a mask to me, but, like, man, she's kind of, they all look like hoochies to me. Why do they got, like, is that a butt crack? Is that a highly pixelated butt crack? I'm sorry, I gotta giggle. That is a highly pixelated butt crack, my friends. Look at that. That's gonna get me demonetized. That is a highly pixelated butt crack. They censored the butt crack in the new version. They took away our butt cracks, guys. That is just awful. How dare they take away the butt cracks? You know, that's just the age we live in. Just gotta take away all of our butt cracks. She dropped me a storm spike. I think that's pretty much it for these guys. Pretty decent revives. I wouldn't go out of my way to hunt them down or anything, but definitely good revives, and I usually grab them whenever I kill them, my Necromancer. Definitely can be nasty in certain like builds and certain characters. Like, you have to keep your resistances up. In Hell difficulty and Nightmare difficulty, they really want you to have your resistances up. And obviously they're also giving you penalties at the same time. And if you're running around in Nightmare and Hell difficulty and you don't have resistances, and one of these archers gives you a nice thwack, and you're wondering why the hell you just got, like, ripped asunder like freaking a phone book in some sort of, like, wrestling strength competition, this is probably why, because they have the ability to deal elemental damage of essentially all different types with the exception of magic. And even in Act 5, they have fire arrow and cold arrow that they can shoot at you essentially, and exploding arrow and freezing arrow to make matters worse. So you're going to end up having some kind of elemental damage coming in from these archers, and since they're ranged, this usually makes things pretty nasty. This does, however, mean that you can use physical damage reduction, PDR, and magical damage reduction, MDR, on these guys, because anything that is fire, lightning, or cold or poison can be reduced by MDR as well. So that does help. So it's a physical attack that PDR and MDR both work on at the same time, because it does contain elemental damage. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me, even if we're looking at some pixelated butt cracks. And be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And as always, keep watching.